We're in the middle of Torah Yud Zayin and Likutey Moharan, called Vayhi Hem Merikim Sakehem, and we are up to Ot Tet, part 9 in this Torah. And Rabbi Nachman is explaining to us in this Torah. Yesterday we spoke about this Torah in the context of Rosh Hashanah, but there's more to be said about that. Rabbi Nachman is explaining to us in this Torah how we can come to experience awe and love of Hashem, being in fear and in awe of Hashem's greatness, of the splendor and glory of His kingship, and experiencing the love, loving Hashem and experiencing the love from Hashem to us. And we receive this experience, it's something that we receive from the tzaddik. How do we receive this experience of feeling a tremendous awe of Hashem's greatness and experiencing the love towards Hashem and the love from Hashem? How do we receive this from the tzaddik? Because the tzaddik gives us a certain awareness, a certain deep understanding and experiential knowledge that we experience in our heart by bringing us to this awareness on a deep level. He brings this consciousness into our hearts, and so we feel what this understanding brings us to experience. And so to the extent that we're able to receive the light of the tzaddik, that's the extent that we're able to receive this consciousness, this understanding that the tzaddik gives us. And to that extent, we'll be able to experience a greater awe and a greater yira and ava, greater awe and a greater love of the Ribbon Shalom. And we were speaking about how this is experienced every day. Every day we go through this process of being Mamlich HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of experiencing, celebrating the kingship of Hashem, celebrating Hashem as our king, accepting Hashem as our king. And when we celebrate the kingship of Hashem, it's compared to the coronation day of the king. And on the coronation day of the king is there's a parade, and everyone comes and everyone sees the king in his royal entourage, wearing his royal clothing, in all the honor and the respect of befitting such a great king. Okay, and everyone sees it. The whole year they maybe knew about it. They knew that this is a king, and they knew that he is the king. But now they're seeing it with their eyes, and so there's a much greater experience of awe when you see it with your own eyes. And everyone is celebrating the kingship of the king, and the king is surrounded by his pride. That's the royalty. That's the royal clothing, the royal entourage of being a king. The pride of being a king. And Rabbi Nachman teaches us that this is the pride, when we're speaking about Hashem, it's the pride that Hashem prides himself with the Jewish nation. And so when the tzaddik brings us to experience this, to know this, to feel this, to understand this in our heart, the tremendous pride that Hashem prides himself with the Jewish nation in general, and with each individual specifically in the Jewish nation, that the tzaddik brings us to recognize and understand deeply in our hearts, this is the reason why Hashem created the whole universe, the whole world. Everything that Hashem created was for this purpose. This was Hashem's intention, His initial intention. The main goal, the main purpose, the number one purpose for creating everything was, what was the end? What was to come out of everything? Was this pride that Hashem prides himself, the Jewish nation. And so that's the reason, the general reason, the reason for everything that Hashem created in general, and the reason why Hashem created every individual detail in all the universe, in the spiritual realm, in the physical realm, was all for this pride. And the tzaddik brings us to understand this, to experience this in our hearts. It's not just intellectual, it's experienced in our heart. We feel it, and when we feel it completely, then what comes about from that is this tremendous awe. Just like when you see the king in the royal entourage celebrated, the kingship of the king is celebrated, and everyone recognizes that's something that's truly awesome, and everyone feels that awe in their heart. And so that's the first experience that you feel from this understanding, which is the light that the tzaddik is shining towards you, and you're receiving this light from the tzaddik. And then what comes from that is that the king is in a state of tremendous happiness and joy towards his subjects. He has a tremendous love for his subjects, and this celebration is so wonderful and so fantastic. This is the fulfillment, the tremendous fulfillment of the purpose for creation, the purpose of this is the birthday of the king, okay? And so the king now gives from that love that he has a tremendous love and tremendous appreciation to his nation that has made him, that has accepted upon themselves him as their king, that they have made him king. It is because of them that he is king. And melech bilo am. We know that Tanya speaks about this a lot. There is no king without a nation. And so now from that tremendous appreciation and that tremendous love, the king is shining that love, is radiating that love, and whatever they need, all of his subjects, every individual in his nation, whatever they need, whatever they wish for, whatever they want, he fulfills. He fulfills all their desires and all their wishes, and that's tremendous love that we experience. And so this we spoke about yesterday, how it's the sweetening of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the aspect of din, okay? In Kabbalah and the Kavanot, it's called Ak ve'abiyat gvura. It's the whole dimension of judgment is rectified through the process of the tefillot and the shofar of now from Rosh Hashanah all the way till Yom Kippur. And so this process of sweetening the judgment, we said, happens when you experience the judgment energy no longer as a disconnected fear, but now as a fear that is really an awe, an expanded experience, expanded consciousness of awe of the Ribbon Shalom, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what you come into Rosh Hashanah, that's the basis, the foundation of Rosh Hashanah, and accepting Hashem as your king, willingly, with your own volition, with your whole heart, okay? And when that happens, you experience this awe that now you are part of this pride of Hashem, the reason why Hashem created the world. And that's the awe that comes upon us when we see the tefillin, when the tefillin are revealed. Okay, and we spoke about this yesterday, how the tefillin is connected to the crown, and that's the crown of the king, right? The crown, when you crown the king, the coronation of the king, that's the tefillin that we're speaking about. That's the Rosh Hashanah. And when this happens, so there's this tremendous sweetening of the judgment on Rosh Hashanah, and that shifts into an experience of love. Hashem shines his love, radiates that love towards us, and gives us all of our heart's desires, and all our wishes and needs fulfilled in the sweetest, most wonderful ways. And so another point of this that we see in the process of Rosh Hashanah is the other part of the Torah. So the Rabbi Nachman in this Torah also speaks about how can we merit to experience the light of the tzaddik. The tzaddik is the one that gives us this understanding in our heart to experience it. How is someone who was blinded to the light of the tzaddik able to remove that block and now connect to the light of the tzaddik and experience the light of the tzaddik? And we spoke about how we must eliminate those forces of obscurity and those forces of concealment which surround the Malchut. They surround the mizbeach. And we want to come to a state of what the Gemara calls, the pasuk the Gemara brings, Za shulchan asher lifnei Hashem. That every table, every time we eat our food and we're enjoying the physical world, we're enjoying it with an awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're enjoying it with a recognition that we're eating from the table of our King. And therefore, we are intending that the food that we are eating and all of the enjoyments of this physical world should be nourishing. The reason why we're enjoying it is only to nourish our higher self, only to nourish our neshama. And this is the whole intention of the mizbeach. This is exactly what the mizbeach is all about. This is exactly the whole aspects of the idea of the mizbeach. The idea of the mizbeach is lifting up, elevating all of the parts of the physical world and making them holy. And so how do we do this? How do we complete the Malchut? We want to complete the Malchut. We want to lift up the Malchut. Okay, so all of this is speaking about lifting up the Malchut. When the Malchut is brought to her state of perfection, at that point, our higher self is freed from the shackles from the confinement, from the limitations of the lower self, and we can experience this higher state of consciousness that the tzaddik wants us to understand and to experience, which is this is about being invited to the celebration, celebrating the coronation of the king. How can I merit to be part of that celebration? How can I merit to experience the awe of Hashem and the love of Hashem, which comes through celebrating the coronation of the king, which comes through that understanding that we receive from the tzaddik? It's all about the Malchut. It's all about lifting up the Malchut. And Rabbi Nachman says that we bring the Malchut to that state of perfection that we're speaking about through the righteous converts. And the righteous converts are those sparks that belong to the Malchut. They are Jewish souls that were lost among the 70 nations of the idol worshippers. And then now when they're being returned to the Malchut, so the Malchut is completed. It's like the parts of the mizbeach which are put back together. But how do we free those Jewish souls that are lost in that great darkness among the 70 nations? It's terribly hard for them to be freed from that darkness. If you imagine, especially if those Jewish souls were lost there for many generations, hundreds of years, thousands of years. And Rabbi Nachman says that this comes through tzedakah. When we give charity, the more people that we give charity to, and sometimes we can give charity to one person, like a Talmid Chacham, person who is a soul of a soul. He's a collective soul. He's a source soul. Any person that dedicates their life to Torah study, to Torah knowledge, to increasing Torah knowledge for themselves and for others, teaching Torah, increasing Torah consciousness, such a soul is a collective soul. It's a source soul. And such a soul includes within it many souls. And when you give tzedakah to such a soul, it's as if you give tzedakah to many souls. And when you give tzedakah to many, many people at once, all of these people that you give tzedakah to, between you and the place of their soul, it's created a field of love energy. Because when you give tzedakah, when that money that you're giving, you're buying love. Rabbi Nachman explains. Hon Yosef Ra'im Rabim, the pasuk in Mishlei says, wealth increases many friends, and you're buying love, you're buying friends. And that friendly energy, that love energy, dissolves any of the anger and hatred energy which may be found in the environment. And when that is removed from the environment with the power of love melts it away, and the power of love which is perpetuated through the charity. Now, when the tzaddik, when the Mordechai is the one that has the power to cancel out the corrupted belief systems of idol worshippers, of idol worship, of the 70 nations of idol worshippers. Now, when he speaks those words of truth, those words of Torah, those words that cancel out the idol worship belief system, those words are so powerful that they are now considered as if they are written, engraved, inscribed in the reality, in the environment. And those words now are found far away in these other parts of the world, in the other ends of the earth, in the other corners, in all the corners of the earth. Where are they found? They're found in the books of the idol worshippers and of their religion. And who finds them? Those Jewish souls. Now they are awakened by those words. Those words are proving to them that they are found in a place of darkness, that they are lost among those places that really are not right for them. And so when these words now are resonating with these Jewish souls lost among the 70 nations, they cause them to recognize their home, recognize where they came from, that they were included with Hashem in creation of the world. As the Medrash says, that Hashem consulted the Jewish souls when he created the world. And that's a tremendous, tremendous significance, to be beyond and behind and above all of the universe. If they were consulted, if these Jewish souls were consulted, if our Jewish souls, all the Jewish nation was consulted by Hashem in creating the universe, then that means that they come from a place before the universe, much higher than the universe. And that's what we spoke about yesterday. We are lighter. I am lighter. I'm the lightest creature in the whole sea. Okay, lighter means that you are higher and above and transcending the whole universe. And so they come to recognize this, and they recognize that now that they are going to the mouth of the Leviathan, as we saw yesterday. They're being lost in that darkness. They're lost in that darkness. And so that motivates them to find their way home. As difficult as it is for them to leave the place where they were born and to leave their surrounding, their environment, it motivates them to find their way home. And so when they find their way home, that completes the Malchut. But in the words of Rabbi Nachman, we see a couple of times that when he speaks about the righteous converts, it's not only exclusively speaking about righteous converts that are the souls that are being returned to home to complete the Malchut. It's also referring to people that are born Jewish, but never had a Jewish upbringing, or they had a Jewish upbringing, they had a Jewish education, and they were maybe even Jewish, they were observing Judaism, following the halacha and the Torah and the mitzvot, but then they left the way and they lost the way, or they lost the way for a long time or just for a short time. But whatever it is, they need to return to that state of their higher self, to be in alignment with their higher self, with their goals, with that fulfillment of Torah and mitzvot, with the alignment with Hashem's will, alignments with Hashem's Malchut. And so when they return to Hashem, that also completes the mizbeach, and that also will happen through tzedakah, okay? Because the charity causes that the words of Torah, the sparks of Torah which are found in the whole world, are now awakened to really kind of shout out to those lost souls, to those souls wherever they may be in those lost places. Now the Torah that is found in that dark place where they are shines and shimmers and vibrates and shouts out to them and tells them, awakens them to recognize how far they've fallen and to recognize where they've come from. That elated, that high place where they come from, that source of their soul. And so both they are coming back, the righteous converts and the people that need to do Teshuvah. This is considered Teshuvah. This is two types of Teshuvah. Righteous converts that are converting back to Judaism is also called Teshuvah. And this happens through tzedakah. And so now what I wanted to add to what we said yesterday was that what's really, really significant to recognize is that the month of Elul is a month of tzedakah. The month of Elul is known to be the month that we prepare. We use this month to prepare ourselves for Rosh Hashanah, to prepare ourselves for Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur was the 40th day, Moshe Rabbeinu, after the sin of the golden calf, after the Egel HaZahav, Moshe Rabbeinu went up again to heaven to learn Torah with Hashem and to pray to Hashem and to receive a complete atonement and to receive the second luchot, to receive the Torah again. Okay, this is the second chance that we were given. And when did we receive it? We received it on Yom Kippur. Moshe Rabbeinu came down. And so Yom Kippur is really like the Shavuot, it's the Chag of receiving the Torah that applies after the sin of the golden calf. Because the second luchot, which is what we have today, we are in the state of the second luchot today, normally. That's what we received on Yom Kippur. And Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shamayim. When did he go up to Shamayim to receive these second luchot from Hashem? After Hashem forgives the Bnei Yisrael, he goes up on Rosh Chodesh Elul, at the beginning of Elul. And that's why we blow the shofar during the month of Elul, so that we don't fall to those mistakes that they fell the first time Moshe Rabbeinu went up, and they fell to the sin of the golden calf. How does that help? That's a whole other shiur. But this time of Elul is the preparation. It's the preparatory time for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And this is a time that has a special significance of tzedakah in this month. We know this Kabbalistically, the 12 months of the year, each one of them has a certain combination of Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, in a certain way, written in a certain permeation. And that permeation, that combination of the Yud Kei Vav Kei comes from acronym of beginning letters or the end letters of a certain pasuk in the Torah. And the month of Elul, the Yud Kei Vav Kei that comes from the month that signifies, it represents the way that Hashem runs the world, the way that Hashem reveals himself in the world during this month. And that means that it represents the way that we connect to Hashem in this month. It's the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the combination, it comes from the pasuk, Tzedakah tihiyeh lanu ki. And it comes from the final words of this, the final letters of the words of this pasuk. Tzedakah, and charity, tihiyeh lanu ki, will be for us because. Okay, tzedakah, final letter is hey, tihiyeh, hey, lanu, vav, and then ki is yud. So these are the four letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and that combination represents the way that Hashem runs the world and where we connect to Hashem in this month of Elul. And another hint, another representation of charity, of tzedakah, a connection between tzedakah and the month of Elul, is the pasuk in Esther, which is many psukim in this Torah are brought from Esther, Megillat Esther. Mishlach manot ish lere'ehu umatanot la'evyonim. Lere'ehu umatanot la'evyonim. Ish lere'ehu umatanot la'evyonim. Those four words begin with the letters of Elul. Ish lere'ehu, a man to his friend, umatanot la'evyonim, and presents for the poor. And so the first two words are part of the mitzvah mishlach manot, right? Giving food, giving meals, presents, meals to our friends, and we do that on Purim. And the second two words are the vav lamid, umatanot la'evyonim, and presents to the poor, which is charity, that we also do on Purim. These are two mitzvot that we do on Purim. And they're both, and these four words, the beginning letters of these four words spell out Elul in the regular order, in the right order. And so the tremendous connection between charity, tzedakah, and the month of Elul. And this is exactly what we see represented in this Torah, that through the tzedakah, when we give the charity, when we give all of this tzedakah in the month of Elul, so then all of these souls return back to Hashem. The people that were born Jewish and they just need to return to Torah observance and connection to Hashem, feeling Hashem in their heart, right? Some people, they can be on the outside serving Hashem halachically, but they need to also the Teshuvah to reconnect to that feeling, experiencing Hashem in their heart. And the Jewish souls that were lost among the 70 nations of idol worshippers, they need to do Teshuvah, returning home by converting back to Judaism. Both of that happens in the month of Elul through the tzedakah, the charity that we gave. And this is also alluded to in the pasuk in Pashat Nitzavim. It says, Umal Adonai Elohecha et levavecha ve'et levav zarecha. And Hashem will circumcise your heart and the heart of your children. So the words your heart and the heart of your children and the heart of and the hearts of, those four words, your heart and the hearts of, et levavecha, ve'et levav, is also beginning with the letters that spell out Elul in the right order. Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed. And what does that mean? That means that in this month, through the tzedakah that we gave, our hearts are circumcised. What does it mean they're circumcised? It means that Hashem removes the blocks. all of those blocks that we were speaking about that don't allow our higher self to be free to experience these spiritual experiences, to experience Hashem, to experience the light of the tzaddik, to experience the awe and the fear and the love of Hashem in our hearts, well, all of those blocks are removed. They're dissolved. That's what it means, circumcise your heart. And that's exactly what Teshuvah is all about, that those blocks are dissolved, and then we are able to reconnect in a healthy, wholesome way. And so this is what the month of Elul is all about, that process of tzedakah brings us back to Hashem, connects us back home to our higher self, to our true self, so that now, when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, we can experience the light of the tzaddik, and we can be invited, so to speak, to the celebration and experience the celebration, celebrating the kingship of Hashem, the coronation day of the king, experience that fear energy as an awe, as an expanded awe of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And from there, that fear energy is sweetened as this expanded experience, and it's sweetened further so that we experience the love that Hashem loves us and gives us all of our heart's desires in the sweetest, most wonderful ways. And so this brings us to, let's see inside maybe a couple of lines at least in the Ot Tet in this Torah. V'zeh vayhi hem merikim sakehem. Finally, at the end of the Torah, Rabbi Nachman takes the pasuk that he begins, the verse that he began this Torah with, and he fits all of the parts of the formula, all the parts we spoke about in this Torah, he fits it into this pasuk. Vayhi hem merikim sakehem. The pasuk says, it happened as they began emptying their sacks, that behold, each one's bundle of money was found in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they became frightened. Their father Yaakov said to them, you're making me shakal, you're making me lose my children. Yosef, why? Because Yosef is gone and Shimon is gone, and now you want to take Binyamin? So that's the story that was happening there with the context of this pasuk that we're speaking about. Now let's begin again. Let's see inside what he says about this pasuk. Vayihem merikim sakem. And it happened as they began emptying their bags, their sacks. It says Rabbi Nachman, Hainu bechinat lavshu shamayim kadrut v'sak asim. Shamayim hainu yira ve'ahava. Kshehem merikim et hasak ve'achoshech min ha'yira ve'ahava. V'hine ish tzro kaspo b'sako. So it says Rabbi Nachman that this sack is referring to the fear and the love of Hashem, because we see this pasuk that says, there's a pasuk that says that clothe the heavens, labshu shamayim kadrut v'sak asim, clothe the heavens in blackness and sackcloth, I will make their garment. Okay, so the shamayim we see in the context in that pasuk of the sackcloth. Lavshu shamayim kadruk v'sak. The heavens were clothed in blackness and sackcloth. Okay, and so the heavens is the fear and the love of Hashem. And when they are emptying, and when they empty the sack and the darkness from the fear and the love, והנה איש צרור כספו בשקו, צרור כספו זה בחינת הצדיק, בחינת צרור הכסף לקח בידו, שהם הצדיקים כמו שפירש רש"י שם בשקו, היינו שאור הצדיק נתחשך ונתלבש ונתכסה בכדרוק ושק, היינו שמרגישים שהשק והחושך שהיה על היראה ואהבה, זה מחמת שק וחושך שנחשך להם אור הצדיק. So it says Rabbi Nachman that they emptied out the sack and the darkness from the fear and the love. What does that mean? That they lost the fear and the love of Hashem. When they recognized that they lost their fear and their love of Hashem, where is that experience of awe and love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And they realized, they found ish tzoror kaspo b'sako. And behold, each one's bundle of money was found in his sack. What does the bundle of money represent? That's the tzaddik. Like it says a pasuk in Mishlei that says, he has taken the bundle of money with him. Tzoror kesef lakach biado. That's referring to the tzaddik, like Rashi says over there in Mishlei. They take the bundle of money with them, meaning that they really use this world to the fullest. People think that they're living the best life, and that the tzaddik is not living the best life because he's not really enjoying anything in this physical world. But the Mishlei, Shlomo HaMelech says that the tzaddik took the bundle of money in his hands, meaning he really used this world to its fullest. He really invested in this world in the best way. Okay? No regrets to the tzaddik. And so the tzaddik is referred to as this bundle of money. Okay? Bisako, in his bag, in his sack, right? Because each one found the bundle of money was found in his sack. What does that mean? It means that the light of the tzaddik was obscured and enclosed and concealed in the blackness and the sackcloth. What does that mean? That the light of the tzaddik was obscured and concealed in the blackness of the sackcloth. He says that they experienced this sackcloth, this darkness, this blackness that was blocking them from feeling the fear and the love of Hashem. They realized that it came from darkness and sackcloth. The reason why they're not experiencing the fear of Hashem is because the light of the tzaddik was darkened, was concealed, and blocked out. Okay? And when they and their fathers saw their bundles of money, they became frightened. Right? When they and their fathers saw the bundles of money, them and their fathers, what does that mean? Says Rabbi Nachman, they recognize that their bundles of money are dependent upon the chomer and tzura. What is that referring to? The chomer and tzura. The chomer is the material, it's matter, and the tzura is the spiritual, it's the form that is given to matter. Hema va'avihem, them and their fathers, is referring to these two parts of the world, these two parts of existence, these parts of reality. What reality is made up of is matter and the form of matter, which is really another way of saying the body and the soul. Okay, the physical and the spiritual. Hema, them, is the matter. It's the aspects that represent action. Okay, the physical aspect, the material. Vavihem, and the father always represents the consciousness. The father is the seichel. It's the aspect of chokhmah. Okay. What does that mean? So what does that mean? That means that they saw that their bundles of money were dependent on them and their fathers. Them and their fathers is a code word, says Rabbi Nachman, for rectifying one's actions, and therefore by doing so freeing one's consciousness to be able to experience the light of tzaddik. Rabbi Nachman spoke at the beginning of the Torah. In this Torah, he spoke about achiruta ma'asim ve ksiluta sechel. He says the thing that blocks a person from experiencing the light of the tzaddik, it's two things which come really connected to one thing, but he breaks it down into two parts. It breaks it down into the inappropriate, the shameful actions. So a person's actions, the way they're living their life, practically in action is inappropriate, is disconnected, is misaligned, and that causes that the seichel, the consciousness of the person, is lost, it's blocked, and it has fallen to a state of foolishness. And so these two aspects are really representing the two parts of reality, the body and the soul, right? So the actions of a person are represented by the body. The body is what does action. It's the matter, the part of what's called chomer, the matter, material, the physical. And then the consciousness is representing the soul, the spiritual. And both of these things are connected as one, and they can both be in a state of disconnect, a state of fragmentation, which causes a person to be blocked from the light of the tzaddik. And that's what they realized here. They saw that their bundles of money were dependent on Hema v'avihem, on them and their fathers, which, as we said, is the code word for the actions of a person and the consciousness of a person. And the bundles of money, we said, is a code word for the tzaddik, right? We said the tzaddik is represented here in this pasuk as the bundles of money. So they saw that the light of the tzaddik, which is the bundles of money, is dependent on how they act, their actions, and their consciousness. Hema va'avihem. Right? And then he says, Vayomer lehem Yaakov avihem. Yaakov says to them, Haynu tochichot ha-sechel shemochiach et ha-chomarim shem kelei ha-ma'aseh shu tolei ha-tzirchon bechlei ha-ma'aseh. So Yaakov is the sechel, and Yaakov tells them how to fix this, how to rectify this, how to purify and heal from this problem. Okay, so Yaakov is the higher intellect, the higher consciousness, which rebukes the matter, the physical self, the action part of a person, and he attributes the guilt to the action. He says that, oh, it's because of you. It's because you've been acting inappropriately. Okay, and that is really the reason why the consciousness fell into a state of what we call foolishness, incoherent thinking, the chaos that we spoke about. It's all, where does it start from? It starts from the inappropriate action. And this is what he says to them. You are making me lose my children. That's the literal translation in the pasuk. What does that mean? That means that through your inappropriate, your unseemly deeds and actions, you brought about an eradication, a loss of my higher consciousness to a state of foolishness. Yosef einenu, Yosef is gone. What does that mean? This corresponds to the wealth that, what was the pasuk in Mishlei? Hon Yosef, wealth, which is the charity we spoke about. Yosef will add more friends. You're buying yourself friends with the money, with the charity. And Yosef, says Rabbi Nachman, is the same word as Yosef. And so Yosef einenu, meaning that this aspect of charity you are not using. You're not giving charity. And therefore you don't have the friends. But Shimon einenu, and because of that, what comes about that is that Shimon is gone. What does Shimon represent here? Shimon is the aspect of his words, his fame or his words were heard, went out, and they resonated throughout all the provinces. The pasuk in Megillat Esther that Rabbi Nachman brought us beforehand, right? So Shimon is gone, meaning this, because you don't have the tzedakah, so then the words of the tzaddik are no longer resonating throughout and spreading out throughout all the provinces, throughout all the land. Binyamin tikachu, and now you want to take Binyamin? What does that mean? What's the aspect of Binyamin? We know from the beginning of the Torah, it's the aspect of the mizbeach, is Binyamin. That's what he says here as well. The mizbeach and the Bet HaMikdash was in the portion and the place that belonged to Binyamin, and he is called the predator, the holy predator. שהוא בנימין, שעיקר שלמות השכל תלוי בזה כנ"ל, דהיינו שהשכל מוכיח ואומר שעיקר החיסרון שנתעקר המוח הוא תלוי רק בכלי המעשה. The seichel, the Yaakov, is telling the action, the instruments of action of a person, that mainly the reason why the consciousness, the higher consciousness has been blocked is because the actions were inappropriate. And what does that mean? That means Yosef einenu, you're not giving charity. And because you didn't give charity, so then the words of the tzaddik, Shimon einenu, those words of the tzaddik are no longer resonating throughout all the provinces, throughout all of the land. Binyamin tikachu, and because of that, now there's a block, there's an imperfection in the Binyamin, which is the mizbeach, and the place of the holy predator, Binyamin. And because of all of this, the consciousness, the higher consciousness, have fallen to a state of foolishness. And the tikkun, way to rectify this, is through tzedakah. So that's what Rabbi Nachman says, finally, that the way that you fix your actions, we said that the beginning of the block, The beginning of those forces that block the light of the tzaddik is what? The inappropriate action. So something is wrong, something is deficient, something is disconnected in the instruments of action, in the way a person is acting, in the deeds of a person, in the physical world. And so how do you fix that? Rabbi Nachman says very, very simple. You fix that by going to the other side and using your actions in the positive. What is the greatest mitzvah that a person can do with their hands in action? The greatest mitzvah a person can use with their consciousness is Torah, right? And then the greatest mitzvah a person can use with their mouth is prayer, tefillah. What's the greatest mitzvah that includes all the other mitzvot, but it's in the dimension, in the aspect, in the bechina of action, with your hands? That's tzedakah. The Baal Tanya speaks about this in a couple of places, okay, to a point where when the Talmud, when the Gemara speaks about a mitzvah and it doesn't say which mitzvah, doesn't specify, it's referring to tzedakah. Okay, the good deed is tzedakah. That's the greatest good deed, and that's the greatest way that you can fix this whole dimension of action. When a person has ruined it, corrupted it, destroyed it through the shameful deeds, through the inappropriate actions, the way to fix it is through tzedakah. And when you give the tzedakah, you're rectifying that, and that's in the dimension of action. Dahainu tzedakah she'tluya b'ma'aseh v'haya ma'aseh tzedakah. Rabbi Nachman brings a pasuk to show us the connection between tzedakah and the dimension of action. It says in the pasuk in Yeshaya, and the action of charity, v'haya ma'aseh tzedakah, the action of charity. So charity, tzedakah, is called an action. And that causes, now that the higher consciousness is no longer in a state of foolishness, because the actions, the vessel is in a right way, so then the light is in a right way. The light is the consciousness, it's the soul. נשלם המזבח, שהוא בחינת שולחנו של אדם, דהיינו שזוכים לאכול בקדושה, ואזי נשלם השכל, ואזי זוכים לראות אור הצדיק, ועל ידי זה מקבלים ממנו יראה ואהבה כנ"ל. ברוך ה' לעולם, אמן ואמן. And so Rabbi Nachman says that because when you give charity, through that we have the Teshuvah, the returning of those Jewish souls that were lost, righteous converts. Through that, the mizbeach is completed, brought to a state of perfection. And through that, a person's table at home, when you're eating your meals, that's completed, that's brought to a state of perfection, that's elevated and connected to Hashem, so that when you're eating, you're experiencing that you're eating at the table of Hashem. And through that, now you're eating in a holy way. And through that, you're nourishing your higher self. And through that, your higher self now comes to a state of expanded consciousness. And through that, you're able to experience the light of the tzaddik. And through that, you're able to experience the understanding that tzaddik gives to you, which brings you a greater love, a greater awe of Hashem, and a greater love of Hashem. And that's how Rabbi Nachman concludes this beautiful Torah, Torah Yud Zayin. So basically, we explain how this Torah really is a beautiful outline of what we're going through from Elul and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. All of this is included. But as Rabbi Nachman explained in a few places, that you can explain the whole Torah with each one of his Torahs, meaning that we may be explained in these past two shiurim, this Torah in the context of Rosh Hashanah and Elul and all this, but you can take the same Torah and you explain it any other chag and any other part of the Shulchan Aruch, any other part of the Torah, you can explain it also how it's represented in this beautiful Torah that we spoke about right now. And that's what's wonderful about it. Wherever you are in your serving of Hashem, you can always find guidance and wonderful insights and wonderful inspiration and advice from Rabbi Nachman, from his Torahs, from wherever you're learning, wherever you open up in the Sefer. And especially when you connect to the Torah on a deeper level, when you understand the Torahs of Rabbi Nachman and Likutey Moharan in a deeper level, in a greater way, so then you can see how it all connects to exactly where you're holding. And you can always find the way, the next level, the next step. And so that's Baruch Hashem. That was a beautiful Torah, Torah Yud Zayin, and Hatzlacha. All the best.